So accursed cultists get scout and get a surge move towards you when they die, and Dread Talons is confirmed to be Battle Shock Central. Let's take a look at a couple more Chaos rules teasers and a roundup of what we know so far. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're talking Chaos Space Marines once again, and in this video I thought I'd do a quick one to cover a few of the rules teasers that Games Workshop have shown us in an article they've put out to promote their Dread Talons box set. This one's really quite a lot more light on details versus the article they dropped earlier in the week when they showed off a bunch of the different detachments. It would have been quite fun to see a few more details on some of the ones they kind of skimmed over there. I'm really looking forward to finding out rules for things like Vastor's Demon Engines and the Fellhammer Siege Host. The main thing we've got are rules and updates for the Accursed Cultists, a few hints as to the Dread Talons, and a bunch of things that are remaining unchanged. And beyond that, I thought I'd just quickly run through the other things that we know about Codex Chaos Space Marines so far, talking over their Tuesday preview briefly, and the things that we saw about Abaddon's datasheet and the Cultist Firebrand. For today's article, they talked about the Dread Talons box set, which we now know is £140, €180, or $230. It's one of the two Battle Force box sets coming out this weekend, and does give something like a 38% discount on the models included within, though it's not desperately high in terms of the amount of points that you get for the money, given there's so many cultists here. As ever with Games Workshop Battle Forces, there's a good chance they won't produce enough, as they didn't really with things like the Stomper Boys or the Dark Angels Deathwing. If you are definitely looking to pick them up, I'd get there early. Here are the times where they should be going live for my discount retailers around the world: midnight Central Time in Wargame Portal, 10 AM UK time in Element Games, midday Australian Eastern Standard Time from Gap Games in Australia, and then midnight Eastern Time in Canada from Fenris Workshop. If they sell out from these and other discount retailers, your probably best bet is to fall back to Games Workshop's web store. They tend to have slightly better stock, but don't offer discounts. As always, big thank you to any who do choose to pick up things through those links. It does help to support the channel with the creation of new content, and saves money versus Games Workshop. I certainly make sure that you're buying things because you truly do want them though, and not just out of fear of missing out. The discount is a fairly good one, but there will be Games Workshop offers in the future, I've got no doubt. Getting into the actual rules that they showed off though, as mentioned, probably the biggest actual reveal was for the Accursed Cultists this time round. These guys being the fairly hideously mutated freaks that came out in the 9th edition launch for Codex Chaos Space Marines. Essentially sort of raised cultist chaff that gain a lot more danger from their various weird mutations, and they have bigger fused ones called Torments. It seems that their datasheet is going to have some fairly major changes. First up, they gained Scout 6 inches on it, which is handy enough to get those bodies into the midboard. Chaos Space Marines don't have access to a huge amount of scout units or infiltrate type units outside of things like allied nurglings from demons, so having a bit more in the midboard at the start of the game isn't the worst. The biggest change here though is their Howling Horde special rule, which my guess is it'll probably replace the regeneration of models rule that they have currently, the one where the horde can slowly regrow itself over time. This one really is quite a good one in my opinion though, for a unit that wants to be skirmishing over objectives. It's one of the surge move type things that we've seen for a few different armies now, kind of similar to the Tyranid Unending Swarm or the World Eaters Corn Berserkers. The idea is that if the Horde unit is shot and you take a casualty, you get to move d6 inches immediately towards the closest enemy unit. You do have to go directly towards that unit, and you can use that move to get into an engagement range if you have enough movement to do so, which could be really disruptive to enemy shooting for the rest of that turn. As it means, for example, they can't just move a whole bunch of units into close range with these guys and then prepare to shoot one after the other to utterly delete the squad. If they put any units within 7 inches of these guys, they might well just get jumped into combat with a single surge move, which is going to be kind of tricky for how you deal with them with gunline armies, as they rather spookily get across the board and might engage things that you really don't want to get locked up, potentially spoiling their shooting or just stopping the accursed cultists themselves being shot anymore, and really means that the enemy needs a countercharge type unit to deal with them. They did confirm in the article that the accursed cultists can still come in a really big chunky squad. If you get 2 boxes of them, they can be 10 of the regular mutants plus 6 of the torments, and that just seems like a unit that's kind of unlikely to get shot down in any one unit's round of shooting, so it does feel like this rule will absolutely come up and can threaten things, particularly with something like a Dark Commune boosting their durability. Seems like it could be quite a problematic unit, though I feel like it's a rule that's going to be far more effective against more gunliney sort of armies versus armies that have loads of scary melee units where they don't really care too much if your cultists just march up to them only to get cut down in combat. Kind of scary that you could get multiple surge moves like this per turn. If you roll well, they could be going a very long way across the board. Really problematic to engage if they're sat on an objective marker. One of the only weaknesses is that they can't make the horde move while they're battle shocked. I guess if the enemy's got any particular units that can do clever things like that, that could be one way to mitigate them slightly. Overall, I'm not sure it necessarily adds strength to the unit. Don't know if they'll adjust the points cost for this. I feel like the regeneration models one was really quite handy as well to have on objectives, spawning things just when you needed a score or to close charge distances. Feels like more of a trade-off versus a direct upgrade, but still seems pretty interesting to me. Otherwise, the second small preview that we had today was for the Dread Talons. Unfortunately, no full detachment rule text shown off, but they basically mentioned it in the Article 3 text. They confirmed that the primary detachment rule for them is a 12-inch aura of -1 to battle shock, which I must admit isn't unexpected, but also isn't exactly good news. It does seem to be a tradition that each time the Night Lords get new rules, it's going to be focused around leadership, and therefore usually underwhelming and unreliable. To be fair, I didn't entirely hate their rules that they had in Ninth Edition. At least they gave you some damage boosts out of that if the enemy failed leadership. But I really hope that the core rule here isn't just literally a -1 to test. I feel like that would be very underwhelming, particularly compared with Marks of Chaos or the other ones they've shown off so far. Fingers crossed it comes paired with something else, such as a must test if not full strength like the Chaos Knights get, or some sort of damage buff as they had before in Ninth Edition, where if units are battle shocked, they get significantly better at killing them in some way. Beyond that, they only have the teaser that a lot of the stratagems and enhancements will key off battle shock as well. Hopefully that's in the way that they'll still be useful if the enemy is not battle shocked, but just get an added effect that gets them massive value if they are. Basically anything that's working off the assumption that the enemy is going to be battle shocked just really needs to be a very powerful rule indeed, as it's just so unreliable. Even if you do stack a couple of debuffs on an enemy unit, there's a good chance that enemy Space Marines are just going to pass that test anyway. It means that you won't be able to play with those rules a good proportion of the time just through random chance. So the actual benefits of actually having to put up with that does have to be pretty good. Otherwise, I guess the only rule that we've seen previewed so far is the warp fueled thrusters enhancement that we had. This one's the one for the new Chaos Lord, allows his squads to jump on and off the board, going around and doing secondary objectives and things. If there's some nice way to get a boosted charge roll out of that, then that could be really interesting. Otherwise, might be a bit less useful on more melee focused Raptors and Warp Talons. Hopefully, there will be some sort of way to improve charge rolls. I feel like it's a lot of Night Lord's entire thing, jumping out of the shadows very fast and hitting the enemy. They have had charge from deep strike rules boosts before. Otherwise, from the article, it's mainly a few confirmed unchanged things. The Winged Demon Prince still gets his battle shot move for moving over a unit. Again, not exactly the most exciting in the world there. The positioning is a bit awkward, and it's not usually going to be all that helpful. I guess it could only be relevant for the Dread Talons if they genuinely do get massive battle shot benefits in some way. In that case, it might make sense to have a few more things that can force tests, though even this one is kind of clunky. Otherwise, traitor guardsmen still get cover on objectives, so in theory aren't the worst for holding down a home field point or similar. In reality, they were kind of rarely played competitively due to their points increase versus regular cultists, which just saw them not taken very much. If their points cost were kind of similar, I could certainly see people thinking about it. The cultist sticky objectives rule that get built in is generally the one that people want to go for more so than slightly elevated chaff. But provided the points differential goes down to something not quite as big, I guess they could be somewhat interesting for their objective control, better armor, and some slightly punchier special weapons like plasma guns. Otherwise, I did notice in the article they seem to be recommending people to buy Helldrakes to support the box set they might be picking up. I guess it's more an on-theme thing for sort of winged Chaos Space Marines and things like that. I do feel like it's a bit weird with Warhammer community articles sometimes though. Sometimes they do mention genuine tactical combos that could be interesting enough, other times they come out with things like that. Unless the Helldrakes are getting some sort of major points decrease, they're still going to be absolutely garbage rules-wise at least. Just maybe seems a little bit disingenuous to be recommending Helldrakes to new Chaos Collectors, when it does seem to be their stealth rules policy that things like flyers and fortifications are basically never really allowed to get particularly competitive, and they get nerfed whenever they start to see some sort of regular tournament play. Finally, let's just do a rapid fire recap of the rules that we know so far. The Cultist Firebrand is going to be the new character for the Codex alongside the Jump Lord, a pretty cool model for Blackstone Fortress. He allows you to re-roll leadership for cultists and gets a Balefire Pike that gets d6 plus 3 strength 5 shots. His inclusion does mean that we're losing one datasheet though, most people expecting either Huron Blackheart or the Exalted Champion to go away, along with Lucius the Eternal and the Noise Marines being folded into their own digital index. Abaddon the Despoiler took 3 nerfs unfortunately. His auras exclude damned units, which, as I'd guessed, they were revealed to be mortal cultist type chaos things. His CP regeneration goes off on a Dark Pact roll of a 7 now, not on a 2+ if you pass, which is a slightly lower chance overall, though not hugely. And he lost his deity specific keywords, only having Undivided now, which definitely would lessen his value in the Pact Bound Zealots, the Word Bearers formation that is basically the new Slaves to Darkness detachment. If he decreases in points though, it's not going to be terrible. Otherwise, we've got Alpha Legion themed Deceptors. They can put Legionaries and Cultists to infiltrate into the mid-board, which is kind of unusual, plus potentially some special characters attached. The Renegade Raiders seems like quite a nice detachment rule. Guns all gain the Assault keyword, which is certainly helpful for firepower units, plus you get extra AP against anything on objectives. Not going to be relevant literally all the time, but that definitely will come up. Very nice for mid and low AP things in particular. They also get an enhancement that grants Scout. The Chaos Cold allows you to make desperate pacts to get an extra 2-inch movement or 2-inch charges. This one affecting those damned units, so the cultists and mortal followers, a bit more movement there. And otherwise they showed off a couple of examples of support rules for the formation, Incendiary Goad and Infernal Sacrifice, both of these being interesting enough to give you extra attacks and extra strength. Potentially a squad with a Cursed Cultist, maybe with a Dark Apostle attached, could genuinely be a pretty fearsome force in combat between all that, certainly enough to maul lots of enemy infantry. The Black Legion one is Veterans of the Long War, and I'll be interested to see their detachment rule. Otherwise though, they've got some shooting relevant options, shooting when you advance, fall back, getting to ignore cover, and the option for devastating wounds on big units of combi bolters. I guess that could be interesting enough for the Terminator squads there. And then otherwise, for the slightly lesser previewed ones, we've got those Pact-Bound Zealots. Will be interesting to see if their mark system has been reinterpreted at all. I can't help but think that if they changed anything, it would probably get a bit less strong rather than stronger. And it does seem that the Talisman of Burning Blood now only triggers if you pass your Dark Pact test, where it used to be regardless of the effect before. I feel like from the general flavour of these previews, there might be a chance that they have reinterpreted Dark Pacts a little bit, maybe having to take the damage before you actually get the effect of it. I guess there could be a chance that you don't get the boon of it if you take the damage and fail your leadership test, though I guess we'll have to wait and see on that front. That's certainly all speculation at this point. Otherwise, for the Iron Warriors, we've got the Fellhammer Siege Host, which has got an enhancement called Iron Artifice, getting you a nice anti-vehicle and anti-fortification on your infantry models. That was probably best for a Demon Hammer on the Chaos Lords, getting you a whole load of devastating wounds there, seeing as they get devastating wounds built in innately. Again, really curious to see what they get. Knowing the Iron Warriors, it'll probably be something either range flavoured or damage flavoured. It might help vehicles, though it seems like that one could be the Vashtor detachment. Speaking of him though, that'd be the Soulforged War Pack. That's the one that's themed around a whole load of demon vehicles, so your Venom Crawlers, Forge Fiends, and Mauler Fiends and things. Seems like it could be nice for things like Obliterators and things like that, if they support those as well. Will be interesting to see what comes of that, and whether or not they actually manage to make Vashtor's rules good for the first time since he came out. In any case though, let me know what you make of the new rules and teasers that they came out with from that article. I'm certainly looking forward to taking a look through the detachments and anything else that might have changed for the Chaos Space Marines. So far I feel like it's looking like a fairly fun codex, though I guess we'll have to wait and see. Hopefully they'll have managed to make each of the detachments interesting and not just have one or two really good ones and the rest be weak. As mentioned, if you were picking up the Chaos Codex, any of these battle forces, or the new Combat Patrol set, the links are down in the video description for when they go on pre-order on Saturday. Anything bought through those does help to support the channel if you were picking up stuff anyway, and of course saves a bit versus the Games Workshop web store. Look forward to hearing your thoughts though. Let me know your ideas on the Chaos rules down in the comments. It will be fun to talk about the Codex in more detail. I'll certainly make a review of it as soon as I can. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and you can find that linked in the video description if you'd like to help support and keep all of these coming. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things happen next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.